Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Kareem and today's video is going to be my March wrap up. But before we do that, I have some book mail. I've had these for a couple of days, but I was waiting to film this video to finally do it with you. Okay, how do I open this? I obviously already know what this book is. That's not the edition that I wanted. I wanted the hardcover. I mean, this is hardcover, but it's not like the other ones. Oh my god. This is disappointing. Anyway, this is Chain of Thorns, book 3 in the Last Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare. Second package. Should be fine, hopefully. Yeah. It's volume 4 of Heartstopper. I read the first 3 volumes last weekend and I love them so much. Spoiler for my May wrap-up, or my June wrap-up video. I can't wait to read it so that I can be ready for season 2 of Heartstopper. Okay, now let's talk about the 6 books that I read in the month of March. The first book that I read is Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. This is the story of 2 Korean sisters who live in New York. They're estranged. They don't want anything to do with each other until one day June is diagnosed with cancer, and because of some circumstances, Jane is the only one who can help her. So they are forced to be in each other's company again, and the story goes from there. This book is very divisive. I've seen this book on many best of 2021, best of 2022 year-end lists. But also one booktuber that I watch, Corona Pages, said that this is the worst book she has ever read. So I was definitely intrigued to know where my opinion was going to land, and I'm very happy to say that I actually really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. In the beginning, I didn't really connect with the characters or the story. I just felt a bit indifferent. I didn't feel compelled to pick up the book and continue reading, but maybe around the 50 or 60 page mark, something clicked and I was just so gripped by Jane. She's a very complicated character. She's not necessarily likable, but she's very human, very raw, and I think Mary's writing helps in making this character feel so human. Her writing is incredible. It is very simple but beautiful at the same time, and she's able to explain feelings and thoughts in a way that makes them accessible even if you didn't go through those experiences yourself. The book is also very funny sometimes. There's this scene in particular that I annotated, but I'm not going to say which one because I literally wrote, "I'm going to hell for laughing." I don't want to, get cancelled, but it was so funny in the most random way. The book deals with very heavy topics. It is not an easy book to read. It talks about eating disorders, abuse, family trauma, so if any of those things are triggering to you, I would advise you to be mindful before you pick up this book. This is a book about the Korean American experience, what it's like growing up with very critical parents and just navigating your 20s. One thing in particular that I really like is the sibling dynamic. It's not ideal, it is far from perfect. You can find 2 people who grew up in the same household with the same parents but have completely different experiences, and I just find that very interesting to read about. And oh, I forgot, look at this cover. So this is, I'm assuming it's June, and here their hands touch. How cool is that? This is one of the most beautiful and creative book covers that I've ever seen. I definitely want to read more of her books. She has 2 other books, Emergency Contact and what's the other one? And Permanent Record. And then I read The Box in the Woods, which is book 4 in the Truly Devious series. Now, I've already talked about this series on my channel. This is book 4 and we follow the same characters, but this time as they solve another mystery. Stevie is invited to this summer camp to help solve a murder that happened years ago. So she brings all her friends and they go to this summer camp, and my god, is this book so gripping, so unputdownable. I was so intrigued by the plot and I was just hooked. It was such an interesting mystery with a lot of plot twists, and honestly I would have given this book 5 stars, except I kind of guessed the ending. On page 47 I wrote my prediction and it turned out to be a part of the big reveal. I wish I wasn't able to predict it so early on in the book. And also the sentence that gave it away for me, obviously I'm not going to tell you which one, ended up not even being used in the reveal, which I thought was weird, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. So yeah, this book. Overall, I loved it. I think it is my second favorite book from the series after The Vanishing Stair, which is book 2. And I definitely want to read the next one, which came out last year or early this year, 9 Liars. The third book that I read is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura, which was translated from Japanese by Philip Gabriel. Now, this was the first magical realism book that I ever read. So I was definitely curious to discover this genre, but I was also hesitant because I wasn't sure if I was going to vibe with this genre. I also believe a lot of Japanese literature is of that genre, but don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. So what is this book about? We follow 7 children who, for some reason, stopped going to school. And so during those school days, when they are home alone, they find their bedroom mirror shining, and when they touch it, they are transported into this castle where they are free to do whatever they want under some conditions, so they have to leave and go back to their room before 5 p.m. Otherwise, there will be consequences. And also, there are some clues that lead to a key, and whoever finds that key will be granted a wish. If you think the plot summary sounds confusing, that's because it was, even for me. The first half was confusing, I was a bit lost, I was a bit bored, not a lot was happening plot-wise, and I didn't feel like the author gave me any reason to care about the characters. But once I understood, first of all, why these kids didn't go to school and, you know, what this castle represented and what was actually going on, there's even a plot twist at the end, I was definitely intrigued and I wanted to know how this story was going to end. I felt for those characters. This book deals with a lot of mature subjects, so I feel like the choice of having the protagonists be kids was maybe done for a symbolic reason. I'm not sure which. And in fact, there's a lot of symbolism in this book. This book is essentially about bullying, about mental health, and it is just a very heartwarming story about friendships and being a kid. Weirdly, I was able to relate to some aspects and some things that these kids were going through, which, you know, as a 25-year-old man, I didn't expect. Overall, I'm glad I read it. I can't say I enjoyed reading it half of the time, but I think it was worth it in the end. But because of that, I'm not sure if I'm that excited to read more magical realism books, at least not now. I wouldn't say I'm turned off or turned on. And then the next 3 books that I read were part of I read the first book of 4 trilogies video, which I'm gonna put somewhere here. I still can't figure out where it appears, so I'm gonna go through them very quickly. If you're interested to hear more in-depth thoughts, then you should check out that video. So the first one was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this book. I loved the characters, I loved the world building, the politics and the stakes. I was completely hooked. I felt the writing was very easy to read, very accessible. I think it is a great way to start reading fantasy books if it's a genre that you want to discover. I was very intrigued by the plot and the plot twist. I personally didn't see it coming. Now that I know about it, I feel like, yeah, it was obvious, but when I read it, I didn't expect that. As I'm filming this, I have already finished the series, but I will keep my thoughts for my May wrap-up. And then I read Chain of Gold, which is book 1 in the Last Hours trilogy, which is part of the Shadowhunter universe. I've talked about this series so many times by now, so I'm gonna spare you the explanation. I loved every second of this book. I loved the new characters. There are so many of them, but they're also different and they have their own personality, and I love their dynamics, I love their friendships, I love the plot in this book, I love the writing, I love pretty much everything about this book. I'd say this is my second favorite Shadowhunter book ever, after Clockwork Angel. Yeah, I definitely agree with what I just said. I also just finished reading Chain of Iron. I will be talking about it in my June wrap-up video. And finally, the last book that I read was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, which is book 1 in the Shades of Magic trilogy. I didn't really like this book. I just found the characters so dull, so boring. I didn't feel connected to them. I did not care that much about the plot. The book did get better by the end, but again, I just didn't feel excited by this book, so I decided to not continue reading this series. However, there's this video that the book Leo did that I watched recently, and she was saying that the series gets way better in books 2 and 3, so she may have convinced me to give this series another chance. However, it's not at the top of my priority. Maybe one day I'll read the second and third books, but not now. I have way too many books that I want to read before that. So these were the 6 books that I read in the month of March. My obvious favorite is Chain of Gold. I think it was a pretty great month of reading. Have you read any of these books? I would love to discuss them with you in the comments. These were the 2 books that I unhauled, Chain of Thorns and Heartstopper Volume 4. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.